Today on Leading with Strengths, I am with a very dear friend, the president of West Virginia University, Gordon Gee. He hails from Utah, where he got his undergrad degree. He got his JD and EDD at Columbia University, and then at the very young age of 37, he became the youngest university president in the country. After that, he was the president of 5 different universities, and in 2009, Time magazine said that he is one of the top 10 university presidents in the country. Gordon, it's great to have you.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here, John. Thank you. Honored to be here with you.
How did you first come across Strengths?
Oh, you know, when Strength Finders came out as a book, the kind of the modern iteration of it, I was one of the first ones to read it.
When would that have been?
Oh, that would have been, what, 10 years ago?
So you were at what institution at that time when you first?
Yeah, I was at Ohio State.
Ohio State. Okay.
Right, and it was introduced. Actually, it was introduced to me. I saw it first of all in the Wall Street Journal. I can remember that.
Okay.
And then it was introduced to me by one of my friends at the university, who said, you might like reading this book, and I did, and I became fascinated. So I have a copy everywhere I go almost. I do have a copy at home. We now have our own personal copy that we have made for West Virginia University that we're giving to parents, and I just think that it doesn't take on biblical proportions, but it's pretty close to being a guide to what people ought to be thinking about in terms of their own personal lives.
Gordon, when you first took Clifton Strengths, of the top 5, which one resonated with you the most?
Well, the one that resonated with me the most was woo. I'm one of the few wooers in the world, but I think that the thing that resonated with me the most, obviously, was achiever, because I come from a very small town. No traffic lights. The fact that a guy from a very small town in rural Utah could continue to do really wonderful things and have exceptional opportunities is something that I think does apply to me in terms of that strength. And let me just say, I think the whole Clifton Strengths issue is paramount for so many people to really understand who they are. And by the way, when I took it, all of a sudden I understood who I was. It's funny. It's as if an angel was on my shoulder, and they understood who I was. Kind of my foibles and a variety of other things. So, for those who haven't taken it, take it. For those who have taken it, learn from it.
So, one of the top 7 demands of leadership that we found in our research is leading through change.
Yeah.
And you're talking about leading change at West Virginia. Can you talk about how you use your achiever or any of your top 5 in order to do that?
Well, I think that, every one of my top 5 really work in that regard, because changing within a university is very, very difficult. In fact, universities held back to the year to the year 1200 with Bologna, and they don't want to really change. They believe that they really have the kind of God-given formula for how universities ought to operate, which is untrue. And it's been very difficult to try to make those. But in me, make those kinds of changes. But with me, the way that I view it is that that we're trying to convince people to be the architects of change, or else be the victim, the way that I look at it. And so therefore, you think about it. People want to think that you have some intellectual capacity. They want to think that you have some drive, want to think that you've got to be able to persuade people. You've got to be able to understand where they come from and be able to adapt to that. All of those are really, in many ways, my top strengths, at least in terms of the change process. And if they hadn't been my top strengths, I'm not certain that some of the changes that we're implementing would be able to, that I personally would be able to lead in some form or other.
Can you talk about what some of those most difficult changes are, and what strengths you're using?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that first of all, the most difficult change within a university is to get people to realize that there is a different kind of a future. And I think that the number one issue in many universities, particularly the large public universities, is complacency. We're happy doing what we're doing. We don't want to change. And so therefore, the issue of being of taking those strengths that we've talked about, particularly the achiever, particularly the woo, particularly the intellectual side of it, is important, because what it allows you to do is to make certain that you are talking at a level with very smart people, but bringing it to a reality to them. And I think that those strengths really have worked for me. And by the way, I think that one of the great gifts of the strengths program is the fact that you also start to hire people around you who have different strengths than you. And to me, it's very important that I not have people around me who are like me. I want to have people that I enjoy, that we're truthful to each other, we support each other, but who bring different strengths. I tell the story, and I probably shouldn't do it but I'll try to do it very quickly, and that is that when I first became president of Ohio State the first time around, I hired a provost who was just like me, wonderful guy. I loved him dearly, and he and I would laugh, and the trains never ran on time. Second time I became president of the university, I hired a guy who was exactly the opposite from me. Hardly spent any time together, but boy, the trains ran on time because we were compatible. And that's one of the beauties of the Strengths program, is that if you're really a good leader, John, you're going to get everyone to take this, and then you're going to take a look and say where you can move people so that their strengths contribute to the whole, because it's a mosaic, and I like to think about what we're trying to do as a mosaic.
What inspired that philosophy to talk about culture and then to talk about strength?
I think it's because of the fact that I've increasingly over time realized that you can have as much talent, and universities have tremendous amounts of talent, that you can have as much talent as you want. But if people are not supporting each other, if they're not getting along, if they're not thinking about the world in some common valence, that then the institution is not going to achieve what it should achieve. Institutions, in some ways, it would be interesting for you to be able to develop a way for institutions to take strength finders, mm-hmm. to see what their strengths are and how you change and how you cajole that and how you move forward with their particular strengths. And that's what I'm trying to do with the culture issue.
Well, your number 4 strength is arranger. And
yes.
People who have arranger have an unusual ability to fit individuals into the right roles in order to make complex processes happen. Can you talk a little bit more about how you lead with arranger?
Yeah, I think that's interesting you just said that, because I think about this a lot. I think that I think for me at least, the opportunity to really hire to really hire people who have a sense of purpose themselves, but who also believe in the larger goal, but also understand that they have a unique responsibility that fits into the larger role, but that they play to their strengths, and that we together create this kind of wonderful fabric. We're sort of, in some ways, I think university president is kind of a knitter. You're knitting this fabric together so that there's a real opportunity for people to work very closely together. And by the way, we talk a lot about it. One of the things that we do, I'm not a great believer in meetings. We meet on Tuesday as a senior leadership team, and I also believe in very small groups. When I was president of Ohio State, the senior leadership meeting we'd have to have in the stadium. I like to have it around a small table, but for the first half hour of an hour to an hour and a half meeting, we just talk about our culture and our strengths. That's all we talk about. We don't talk about who's going to win a football game, what the legislature is going to be doing, or anything else. We spend a good deal of our time talking about who we are and what we're trying to accomplish and how we can work together. That's that mosaic.
Now, speaking of deep thought, big ideas, You have Intellection #1. Can you talk about how Intellection manifests itself for you?
Well, first of all, I read a lot, but I try to think, not just simply about what's on the news, but really try to think about the world that I'm in and how I can be impactful. One of the things that I've thought a lot about is in coming back to West Virginia, which was, by the way, not planned. I mean, it just happened. I had retired from Ohio State, and I was off doing other things, and then they asked me to come back for 3 months, and I came back for 9 years now. But what it is for me is to think about ways that I can really impact the lives of others, of these young people that I have responsibility for the people that I'm working with right now. Right now, we're going through we, like many institutions, have inherited a structural deficit. So it'd be pretty easy to say, well, we'll cut everyone across the board, a variety of other things. No, instead of doing that, what I'm doing is I've really done a lot of reading about how one creates a new reality, and that's what I'm trying to do right now. Secondly of all, I just think it's important to read. I read all the time. I never go to bed without reading for an hour before I go to bed. The only time I fall asleep is when I read some of my own books.
When you're reading, when you're thinking about what to read that hour at night, what do you read?
Yeah, I read biographies. I read some fun things. I'm just reading a John Grisham book right now, just things to take my mind. But I do a lot of reading of newspapers. I read 4 or 5 newspapers every day. I do a number of other things like that because I want to be informed. I think that intellectual capacity is also curiosity in the best sense of the word, and I think the minute you lose your drive to be curious about the world you're in is the minute you ought to hang it up in some way or other.
One of the other 7 demands of leadership is for leaders to think critically. And I think one of the big challenges that we see, at least here in the United States, that when we ask Americans, how many books have you read in the past 12 months, a third of them say, I didn't open one. That's the percent that admits it. But what advice would you have for aspiring leaders who want to be able to think more critically? What should they be doing?
I think that first of all, that's an interesting piece of data that a third of our folks have not even opening books. That's pretty frightening to me. But I think that, and particularly if you're a university president, but I think for aspiring leaders, I believe a couple of things that in terms of just the intellectual life itself. First of all, you need to be curious enough to continue to do writing and research. I've written a couple of books recently. I wrote one on the future of the land-grant university. I've written one about the nature of the public university, mainly not because I want to publish, but because I want to put my ideas out in some way and see if they can't bounce off of other people. So I think that's important, and that I'd advise that to any leader. Don't give up on who you are, and take advantage of the fact that in this instance you're in a university in which there's a lot of assets that are available. Secondly of all, one of the things that I advise everyone is think about the university as a seminar. I try to take maybe a half a day every week to just go around and see something that is really happening on the university campus, whether it be in the medical center, whether it be on our farms or our fields, whatever you can do to kind of understand what is happening at the institution, but also you learn all sorts of things. I mean, I have more damn trivia, that I've learned just from being around. The other thing that I try to do in terms of advising other people and doing it myself is make certain you are surrounding yourself with the public you serve. There are 55 counties in West Virginia. My goal is to be in every county every year. I do most of it in the summer. But the real reason is because I want people to tell me what is happening in their lives and what I can do to be helpful to them as the president of the university. And in rural West Virginia, you can imagine some bow-tied wearing Ivy League lawyer shows up, but after a while, they really enjoy having you come because you come and you come and you come again, and that's the issue of showing up.
The one strength we haven't talked about yet is woo. I think that's the strength that a lot of times when people hear President Gordon Gee, they think of woo. Talk about how you use that. Is it something that you use to build those communities in the 55 different areas throughout West Virginia?
It was funny the other day. At commencement, this woman rushes up to me and she says, "Aren't you the president of the university?" I said, "Yes." She said, "But you're so small." And I said, "Well, yeah, height is not a requirement in my job, but the reason I say that is the fact that, I'm 5'5" and 145 pounds, and so what I have to do is to use humor and grace and being very engaged with people. Besides, I love people. I mean, my daughter will joke all the time that my idea of a quiet evening at home is to have 400 people for dinner, and that really is. I mean, I enjoy the life of commerce with individuals. One of the things that I do, and I just told you I'm 79 years of age, and I shouldn't be doing this, but every Friday or every Saturday night, I call up a couple of students. I say, let's go out. I take them to get pizza. Student Affairs gives me a list of all the parties that are going on. I show up to 21st birthday parties. I go to the bars with these kids, trying to get them to, I just want to see people in their place. And for me, that's part of woodom, if you will. It's that connective tissue that I love.
Have you ever had a moment where you just couldn't win someone over?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
What was it?
What did you do? First of all, never give up, and secondly of all, just understand that sometimes there are people that no longer that you just can't win over, and don't fret about it. I think that one of the things that in terms of positivity, which is which I think is my number 10. I think is always important is always look forward. I advise people never look through the rearview mirror. I think it's very important. I think the three ingredients in terms of strengths for your success are: one, you need to have a very thick skin in today's world. You need to have a good sense of humor, and you need to be able to look forward. Nerves like sewer pipes, and I think all of those come into the woo business in my view.
At what point did you come to that realization? I mean, many people with woo, they want everybody to like them.
Yeah.
And so that can be kind of a barrier.
Yeah.
When did you figure that out?
Oh, I think I used to, when this is almost literally the truth. When I was at West Virginia the first time around, the first time the student newspaper wrote a terrible article about me, I went home and went to bed. I mean, it was horrible. And now what I do is I collect all these articles and so forth, and I kind of use them as a way to entertain myself and other people, when people write me stuff. But more importantly, just understand that somewhere, John, there was a time in which I crossed a Rubicon in which I realized that they were not saying terrible things about me. It was because I was a university president, and they're just personalizing it. And I think when you can cross that Rubicon to realize that it's not about you, but it's rather about the fact that you have responsibilities that they don't have, and that they feel compelled to be able to tell you how to run your business. And when you get to that point, I do not go on social media. I do not. I use social media. I have a Twitter account, etc. But I don't read social media because I think if I did all the time, I'd probably never get out of bed. It's just very discouraging. People in their pajamas at 2 o'clock in the morning saying awful things about you. You need to move on.
What does it mean to you when you win someone over? Talk more about what that looks like.
Oh, I think there's nothing quite like a convert, as I said earlier. But I think that it's not just about winning someone over to like you. It's about winning. It's about winning someone to a point of view that hopefully will enlarge and ennoble themselves and the university that I'm in charge of, or whatever the project that we're dealing with. You, in my view, the greatest impediment to so much of this is cynicism, the cynical nature we deal with, and I think that that's the one thing. On those 34 strengths, I didn't notice the word cynicism, and I think that in and of itself is something we have to try to figure out how we squeeze out. And so I think that I think that allowing ourselves to have an effort to get people to think positively about who they are is really part of what we're trying to achieve here.
And if there was a student that was at West Virginia, they took strengths, they found that they had woo in their top 5. If anyone was starting on their strengths journey, they found out they had, what advice would you have for them?
I tell them to run to woo. No, I tell you something. I think it's. I know that they joke about it with me because there are not many of us around, but I think it brings me great joy to have those kind of conversations with people and to really try to find out who they are and to make friends. You know, I love having friends. I love making friends.
How many friends do you think you have?
Oh, I have a lot.
If you had to put a number on it.
Oh, I don't know, but I've got I have the largest number of. I have my name on the largest number of diplomas of any American ever. And I consider all of them my friends.
How do you stay connected to all your friends?
Telephone. I write. I email. I do everything. I do believe in connection. I really do. And I believe that people. For me at least, if someone drops me a note, I want them to know that I heard from them. So many people. I don't know if you've noticed this, but when you text or email, you never hear from someone. I want to remain connected with as many people as I possibly can. It's not about numbers. It's just about the fact that I think if you like people, you're going to like yourself.
Now, learner's your number 2.
Yeah.
And learners want to learn everything that there is. Throughout your journey of everything that you've learned, what advice would you have for somebody that has learner? Is there a point where you need to say, we've gone through the process of learning too much? What advice would you have for them?
Yeah, well, my number 34th, I think it's number 34 is deliberative. In other words, I don't deliberate very long. I try to gather as much facts as I can, but I'm very quick to make a decision. And I think that's one of the great things about being a learner is the fact that you're constantly soaking up information, and you kind of know how you can navigate some of these issues, but you need to do it very swiftly. I think speed is the best friend of a university president. You can get too far out in front, and you have no one behind you. But on the other hand, so many of my colleagues that I see spend so much time trying to deliberate over every issue that they become catatonic, and I just think that's unacceptable.
And what strength of yours is it that drives you to crack off a decision?
Well, I think two things. One is I think that I think as a learner that I have a lot of confidence in what I've learned and what I'm saying. I think that the other thing is the fact that as an arranger, I just want to get things done, and I want to get them done fast. I think that those two, if you think about strengths, but for me, I think it's really the realization that if you don't move fast, you don't make decisions quickly, that you're going to end up putting the university in the ditch or putting whatever organization you're leading in the ditch. Too much deliberation. The perfect squeezes out the good, and that just can't happen.
Now, when we look at strengths-based leadership, we found that there are 4 needs of followers, and one of the 4 is creating hope. Of your top 5 strengths, which ones do you rely on in order to create hope, and how do you do it?
Well, I think first of all, I think learner is important. I think that woo is important because you have to exhibit and talk about it. But I think that the learner side of it is very important because the fact that the more I learn, the more I see, I can see pathways for hope. I don't see pathways for misery, and I try to find from my reading and from my thinking and from all the conversations I have with people, because learning is talking with a lot of different people, ways that you can see where there are opportunities and options and pathways. I was telling someone the other day that when I came to West Virginia, we'd raced to the bottom in terms of healthcare and a variety of other things, and people just didn't see hope. So what did we decide to do? We decided that what we were going to do is we're going to take what was a nice academic hospital, and we were going to create a hospital system that could serve the needs of every West Virginian in terms of health care and create hope. And guess what? In the last 6 or 7 years, we've bought 24 hospitals. We now have people really knowing that they can get great health care. And that creates a hope cycle that really makes a difference to the people in my small state.
Now, every leader has had obstacles, challenges that they need to face, obstacles that they need to overcome. What's a big one that you had where one of your top 5 strengths or a mix of them helped pull you through it?
Well, I think that when I came to, I can talk about institutions. Let's talk about Ohio State. When I came to Ohio State, it was a massive institution, 65,000 students. But it really was kind of an open admissions institution. It was you all come, and then look to your right and look to your left, and a lot of you won't be here. And so I really felt that in order for the university to achieve what it should for the people of the state was to develop a selective admissions, to really take a look at how we could make certain that we were focusing, that we weren't a Red Cross unit, that we were just not educating or trying to educate people. We actually were engaging in the educational enterprise. I received tremendous amounts of resistance to that because it's a farming state. The land grant mission, of course, was to let every kid come to the university and then let them go forward. And so what I did is I really used my learning and my intellectual efforts to develop a strategy to convince people that, by the way, if we did this, that we were actually going to improve what we were doing for the smaller communities and people in that state. And I came back 10 years later to Ohio State to become one of the really selective institutions among the big public land grants, and the people of the state really valued it much more for what it was about. But it was a tough slog. It was touch and go there for a while whether or not I was going to survive that one.
Also, speaking of creating change at universities, you are now creating a major initiative at West Virginia around strengths, where every student can get in touch with their own top 5 strengths and learn and grow around those. Can you talk more about what is that and also what inspired it?
Well, 2 things. One is the fact that as we're going through this transformation of our university, I want to focus on 3 things. One, I want to put students first. Unfortunately, too often we don't put our students first. We organize universities for the convenience of those of us who work there. Secondly of all, I want to be fiercely land grant. I want to believe that Abraham Lincoln, if he were alive today, would say, now that institution is doing what I think it ought to be doing, rather than kind of having filtered away in another way. And the third thing is differentiation. The strengths program plays into all of those. It puts our students first by helping them to understand who they are, and helping us understand who they are, and helping us develop strategies to play to their strengths wherever they find themselves. Secondly of all, on the land grant side of it, what it really does is I think the Strengths Finder, the whole Strengths program is all about building communities. It's not, you know, you may not think about it this way because you guys are so immersed in it, but to me, what I have really enjoyed about the Strengths program is I've gotten so immersed in it is the fact that it really is about building communities. It's about people coming together with different strengths and figuring out how they can work together. And I think that that's so immensely important. And the third thing is differentiation. I want Gallup to be our partner and in developing a demonstration project that a large public university in a small state that is rural can develop a program in which we really use what you have learned as an organization on how we can improve the quality of life for people in ways that no one else is thinking about. I mean, it's pretty simple. I'm very driven by that notion of being a demonstration project, being unique, and using what we learn with our partnership with you to take to the world.
What's the difference between a graduate who hasn't necessarily identified their strengths, what it is that makes them great, and a graduate that has?
I think the ones who graduate without having really thought about these things, what they do is they float. They float from thing to thing. They're not quite certain. They don't have confidence. They're not clear about what their objectives are. They're not clear about who they are and what their purpose in life is. I think the students who are going to graduate from our institution with our Strengths program are going to be confident. They're going to be humble. They're going to know that they have a calling that is bigger than them. That they're going to know that if they follow that calling, that they can really make a difference in the world. It's not just about their own families, but it's about their own families and their own lives having an impact that goes beyond them.
When there are professors, teachers, faculty that are implementing strengths, what advice would you have for them in the process?
Well, first of all, I want to try to get them all to start implementing. I think that they're going to be universities are kind of divided into thirds. You're going to have a third of them who will be cynical and say, well, what a dumb idea. You're going to have a third of them say, I'm curious, I think that's kind of interesting. A third of them who will embrace it because of the fact they see it as something that they ought to be. What I want to do is I want to get that first third to start using, to start thinking about how this can be value added to their teaching and their learning. And so what I would say to them, I say, you know, try it, give it a chance, but start with yourself. You know, I think for me, at least, the revelation was when I really took the Strengths profile, I realized all of a sudden, you knew more about me than I knew about me. And I think that I think that revelation would be very helpful to a lot of people. And I think once you start with that, once you start with the notion that I've learned something from this, then it becomes a conversion. There's nothing like a convert to these kinds of issues.
The Surgeon General came out recently with a report on loneliness here in the United States.
Right.
We've reported on it globally, that there's a global loneliness crisis. As someone who...
And there's an unhappiness crisis.
That's right. As someone who has done such an incredible job cultivating friendships all over the world, what advice do you have for people?
Well, I think that, first of all, I think that he is right, the Surgeon General, about loneliness. If you take a look at it, one of the number one ingredients of this generation is they're lonely. The reason they're lonely is the fact that they're not connected to other individuals in person. They're connected through the internet, they're connected through texting, they're connected through TikTok, a variety of other things. You might know someone in that vein. They're not, but it is another form of loneliness. It's that you're in a dark room in your bedroom or somewhere you're doing this, and it's not worthy of the kind of connectivity you should have. So I think that the issue is that what we have to do is we've got to stop texting and we've got to start talking. And I think if we can do that, we're all going to be much more engaged in just changing people's lives.
President Gee, thank you so much for building a strengths-based university, and thank you for being a great partner of ours.
And thank you for letting us be your partner. And as I say, we're going to use a demonstration of West Virginia to change the world.
Amen.
Amen.